I'll call the meeting to order and recognize that we do meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE, and I believe even those outliers are still on that territory. So that's you, Councillor Elliott, and Councillor Runge. So anyway, the approval of the agenda, I have no changes in front of me. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I would ask for adoption of the agenda and approval of the agenda. Councillor Paul, Councillor Goulet, anyone opposed? Carried. And then adoption of the special open council meeting minutes of January 26th. Councillor Runge, Councillor Elliott, anyone opposed? Okay. Now, before we start getting into the business of this evening, Ms. Alberts, if you could just go over who's all on but not on video, so that people who watch this know we've got some others joining us.
Okay, so we have all of council now because Councillor Runge has joined us. We have, for media, we have George Henderson and Cassidy from the paper. We have Ria is sitting behind me. We have Tanya that's on Zoom. We have Amy that's on Zoom, Aaron, Carrie, and Lindsay that are also on Zoom.
Great. And the staff are on for their portions of tonight's meeting. So
Right.
Again, as we're back on Zoom again, we'll do negated votes. So I'll ask for the motion and then only ask for those in opposition. That'll expedite us voting. And with that, we'll go on to committee reports, and Councillor Elliott has 2 meetings to report on.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the meetings of FSAC for January 13th and 26th. So just a summary of the 13th, staff informed the committee that the overall assessments for the city increased 2.7%. The committee was also informed that the recreational nonprofit mill rate is the same as the residential rate in many communities. Currently, ours is equivalent to our business rate. If a change is made, it may help with driving development at the airport with hangars, etc. There's very little assessment in this particular class, so the overall change to taxation would only be $1,297, and see the recommendation below. Prioritization of trails during snow ice events. And snow events, roads and sidewalks have always had the priority. It can take days before the trails can be cleaned up, and one of our goals is to help people get outside and enjoy the city more. More people have been using the riverfront trails, especially with the pandemic, and staff feels that if we had a specific piece of equipment that could easily clean the trails, it would definitely help. Staff will bring options forward at the next FSAC meeting. Correspondence was reviewed concerning food security. There will be a delegation at the next council meeting, and currently there's $10,000 earmarked from the COVID Safe Restart Grant for food security pending council's approval. So then we'll slide into the January 26th meeting. Draft operating budget. The FSAC reviewed the draft of the operating document and made some recommended changes. The operating budget will be brought to the February 10th budget review meeting with council. Then a decision on the operating budget will be requested at a subsequent council meeting. See the recommendation below. Amended budget principles policy. FSAC reviewed the budget principles policy CF4, and recommended some updates, including language on when supplementals would be handled in camera versus an open council meeting. Also,
You're muted, Scott. Somehow you muted yourself.
Wow, that's bizarre. I didn't touch anything. Okay, so fleet addition and capital budget update. FSAC reviewed the option to purchase an additional vehicle that would be perfect for the cleaning of the riverfront trail in a more timely manner. The specialized truck is easier to use than other options and can be operated by more staff because of this fact. There are funds in the equipment reserve to fund this vehicle due to lower interest rates on the city's MFA equipment loans. Also a recommendation. 2020 snow costs are over budget at this time. It is anticipated that the city's snow actual costs will be approximately $190,000 over budget. with 165,000 coming from the snow levy reserve. The finance department is busy this year with getting utility invoices out in early February. So here are the recommendations. Moved by Mayor Simpson and seconded by Councillor Elliott and resolved. This is from January 13th. That the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council that the recreational nonprofit tax rate be set to an equal to the residential tax rate to promote future recreational opportunities. And I would move that recommendation.
Seconder. Councillor Goulet, any questions or comments? So on the motion, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion is passed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On to January 26th, amended budget principles policy. Move Councillor Goulet, seconded Mayor Simpson, and resolved that the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council the amended budget principles policy CF4. That was carried unanimously, and I would move that recommendation.
Second. Councillor Goulet, questions or comments? Councillor Rudenberg, were you seconding? Okay. So the one point that I do want to make, some of them are just sort of catching up to current practice or some of the priorities like the light industrial. The one I do want to make that is of a substantive nature, and that's on page 12 of 40 under public participation. The supplemental budget request will be reviewed in an open meeting unless there's rationalization that needs to occur or the introduction of municipal services. As council will recall, we usually did supplemental all the time in camera, went through it all and so on. When we actually looked at this year's supplemental, we couldn't figure out a reason why that conversation was in camera. So that's why we're doing it this way. Often with supplementals, we will be contemplating, some sort of staff adjustment or rationalization, or we're looking at something to do with potential municipal services, et cetera, that does require us to go in. But I think it's better that the default position is it's in the open public dialogue unless the normal community charter in camera items are on that supplemental list. And then it's just a more transparent process. So that's the logic behind that. As I say, the rest of it is tidying up to reflect our actual practice and priorities. Any further questions or comments? Okay, on the motion then, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion is passed.
Also from the 26th is the fleet addition and the 2021 capital budget update. Moved Mayor Simpson and seconded Councillor Goulet and resolved that the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee recommends to Council that an industrial 4x4 flat deck truck with front plow and sander be added to the city's fleet, and that the capital budget for 2021 be updated to include the cost of $90,000 coming from the equipment reserve. Carried unanimously, and I would move that recommendation.
And seconded, Rudenberg. Is that what I saw? Questions or comments? Councillor Runge.
Thank you. I'm sorry about everything there. I've got a question with regards to that. Just because we never talk about fleet generally, is there any opportunity that we utilize or an underutilized vehicle and make it that vehicle, so that vehicle could possibly be used not just for snow removal, but also maybe for summer stuff or bylaw, things like that?
So I just want to clarify your opening comment. We have had substantial conversations about fleet, leading to the adoption of a comprehensive fleet strategy, budget, etc. So we're now into that new world of having passed that. So you're right, from now on, we're not going to get into these kinds of decisions within the normal fleet policy and plan that we've adopted. This is coming forward, to your point, because it's a special addition to that. And I guess we don't have Matt on, city manager, but either you or Director Bolton could speak to the specifics of this, but we did canvass that at FSAC, that this is a particular piece of equipment to do this work. So city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding of this equipment is we do not have a truck currently that this equipment would fit on, so we had to go purchase this. But the reverse is true. In the summertime, when this is not needed for snow clearing, we will be able to remove the sander and use it as a heavy duty flat deck truck for fleet uses.
Yeah, so my,
Go ahead, Councillor Runge.
yeah, thank you. So my question is then, because it is an addition to fleet, would we be able to have a current replacement do this job also?
No, so the conversation we had, so it's addition to fleet, but not addition to budget. So that we're clear on that because of the savings we've had because of the municipal finance rate that we got for our fleet plan. This has actually been accommodated within the same budget allocation. So we're getting an extra piece of equipment without the extra cost. And in the dialogue we had, part of the issue that we've got is we currently do sidewalks as a specialty piece of equipment that requires an operator certificate. And what they want to have is a piece of equipment, to the city manager's point, that it can accommodate this additions, the sander and the blade, that can be driven by any of the employees who are called in to deal with snow. And so there's, Director Thomas has done a bunch of thinking around the best way to get this done. And then our desire, and we'll come back and revisit it most likely through PABCOM, is heading into next snow season to actually look at then the priorities for sidewalks and riverfront trail relative to our roads, because we'll have the equipment and the potential person power to get at the sidewalks and riverfront trail a lot faster. And that's really what the desire is. What we heard during FSAC from Director Thomas, and I think we've all experienced it, more and more the preponderance of the complaints about snow removal and about safety relative to snow are to do with the riverfront trail. Not our roads necessarily, or even our sidewalks. And it's because right now we don't have the capacity to get onto the riverfront trail in an expeditious manner. So this piece of equipment resolves that within the budget assigned to fleet.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, on the motion then, anyone opposed? That motion is carried.
And then attached with my report is also the budget principles policy, if anybody has questions on that. And the next meeting is February 16th. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Moving on to our next committee report, Councillor Runge on Policy and Bylaw Committee. You're muted.
I muted myself instead of unmuted, doing it, sorry, backwards. Thank you. This report should be a fairly quick report also. This report is to inform council what was discussed at the Policy and Bylaw Committee meeting on January 14th. And the one item that we talked about was the fire inspection policy. Assistant Fire Chief Richard presented, and we reviewed the frequency of fire inspections policy, which had become null and void. And it was actually last reviewed, about 18 years ago in May 2002. Anyway, following discussion comparisons with other municipalities, PABCOM is recommending that council approve the attached fire inspection policy number CCR 24 that's attached. And just a note is fire inspection requires that we as a council approve this. This isn't something we can just say, oh, this policy is null and void, and so we let it go. Under section 26 and 36 of the Fire Inspection Act, we're required to make a policy. And the other thing with regards to the policy is that under section 21 of the Fire Services Act, the fire commissioner and assistants always have discretion to increase frequency of inspections if it's deemed appropriate for any type of building. So anyway, our recommendation is to approval of the frequency of fire inspections policy CCR 24.
So can you make the motion? I'll get a seconder.
And I did.
Okay, Councillor Elliott, second. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is passed.
And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Runge. With respect to Cariboo Regional District highlights for the January 15th meeting, just a couple of appoints, you'll note that myself and Director Richmond were re-elected as chair and vice chair of the Regional Hospital District. We also had a delegation from Northern Health with respect to their capital plan for our area. And of course, you know, the preponderance of that money goes into our community. And we've got an update on GR Baker as well as the kitchen project. And then the request for the business planning phase for a potential investment in seniors housing at that time. With respect to the GR Baker project, they do expect it to become closed up. So we should see walls and everything going up around June, July. So it'll get closed in. Then the work will turn inside the building and it is tracking on time. They are hoping to expedite restoration of parking as soon as possible, potentially as early as the fall. So they're not going to kind of do what we'd normally do, you get all the building and everything, and then you'd go around and do all their landscape and parking. Because of the situation there with the parking, they are looking at expediting the restoration of the parking, and there'll be parking on both sides of that building. So I have a meeting coming up in which we'll get a more refined timeline, and I can share the outcome of that with council by way of an email once I get that. With respect to another item on here, the online viewing cameras for the rec centers, I just wanted to point out to council that that grant application would be in addition to the COVID money that the regional district is assigning to that technology. So it would allow them to either reduce the amount of COVID money required or improve the technology and the potential different kinds of technologies that they use so that spectators, parents, etc., can watch from home what's going on in the arenas. And then you'll note on the final page of that, page 21 of 40, some reappointments to the North Cariboo Agricultural Development Advisory Committee. For those who are new councillors, this is a committee that was established last year. Our economic development group works with that committee, and they have supported us in our food innovation hub, and there's some cross-pollination with them. But it is a Cariboo Regional District North Cariboo committee by bylaw. And so the CRD is the one that makes the appointments and make sure it meets the requirements under their bylaw to give advice and to do some work on agricultural initiatives in the North Cariboo. Those are the only ones that I thought would be of interest to council. Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. I was just hoping you could explain a little bit about the application to NDI to market a regional economic development website. So how does that tie in with the entire region? Or is that just specifically for CRD, or does that also include the municipalities?
Our manager Reid is on, and I think she might be able to better tell us the articulation. We do articulate with those initiatives. Amy?
Sure. So the Cariboo Regional District Economic Development website is one of the actions coming out of the labor market study. So if you look at a website like, and now I'm going to forget the name of it, but there's one in the Kootenays. It's not Invest Kootenay. I can find the link and send it out to council, but it's a regional website, and then each community or municipality is highlighted with work opportunities and education opportunities and lifestyle opportunities within that. So it'll be a way that we can market the region wholly with a landing page when the Cariboo Regional District is doing marketing for the region, but then it will also funnel people to all of our information as well if people click through to Quesnel through that website.
Thank you. I was wondering how we were tied in with that. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Any other questions or comments about the Cariboo Regional District update? Okay, moving on to our next committee report. Councillor Vic on the Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this past January 27th, executive met, pretty full agenda. And I'll start with a small procedural change regarding our strategic initiatives calendar. We're going to adjust the calendar so that items will continue to be tracked as those initiatives move through the process. So we can just keep tabs on elements of those projects and keep council appraised of things, positive things that are happening and progress that is being made. And I think that's good for council, and that's also good for the community as we're able to articulate progress as it's made. We moved on to food security. Following an informative and very important discussion regarding the issues surrounding food security in the community, executive has identified some areas where we can engage on the issue. First of all, executive will recommend to council that, and this is going to follow as a recommendation, that the current free lease of office space by the community food coordinator at the fire hall number 3 on Anderson, that we continue to provide that space at no cost so long as programming continues, and that will follow in a recommendation. Executive will also accept an invitation from the community food coordinator to attend a stakeholder meeting in April, where we'll participate with ongoing discussions around the whole food security issue. So I think there are obviously some councillors tonight that I know would like to be part of that. You will be invited, and the mayor's also made some recommendations who would also participate in that discussion. And you will also receive an invitation from Kirsten Belaski. Lastly, on food security, the city will work with the food coordinator to support efforts to educate and inform city and area residents about available food resources and supports for those that need those supports. And a first step to be considered is some form of a mail out or communication to all area residents that educates on opportunities where to get food affordably, and also those supports where you can access supports in the community. In food coordinator Belaski's assessment, there's still a huge knowledge gap on those supports, those programs, and frankly, all the opportunities in our community, both seasonally and unseasonally, winter and summer, where you can get food in our community. So then we moved on to the interconnector community engagement topic. In anticipation of the project advancing to the next stage in its development, staff will engage with project leads at MODI to get an update, confirm its status, and learn the next steps of this critical infrastructure project. After this report is brought back to council, re-engagement steps with the community will be considered. It's been some time since we've heard a lot of news on this project, and it's definitely appropriate to discuss and share the most current information available. Ideas to consider for this re-engagement may include an open house, a mail out, social media outreach, or all of the above. Then we moved on to the North Cariboo Seniors Council. With the recent council decision to provide the NCSC with $100,000 from the COVID Safe Restart allocation, the executive committee clarified the creation of the MOU between the city and the NCSC, and Director Bolton will draft this document, which will contain provisions that require the NCSC to provide some budget information, strategic planning information. And as intimated by the NCSC, which I'll mention in my next report, very grateful, very excited about the opportunities to continue their work. And the key items that will be included in this budget will obviously be some administrative and logistical support to help them keep managing all these great initiatives that they continue to develop. And obviously there's programming needs as well. Then we moved on to our last topic, was the NCLGA resolution submission process. And I know all of us, all councillors, are just chomping at the bit to provide some resolutions. And executive would love to hear about everything about all your ideas, and specifically how your resolution might relate to our strategic plan and our strategic initiatives. So we invite council members to submit your proposals to executive so we can help you form them, and we can expedite those to NCLGA. And I'll move the recommendation that I alluded to at the beginning of the report regarding that executive committee recommends to council to extend the free lease and in-kind supports for the Canadian Mental Health Association of the building located at 445 Anderson Drive, as long as the Canadian Mental Health Association continues to run community programming at this location.
Seconder. Councillor Rudenberg, any questions or comments first on the motion, and then we can go back to the report. Councillor Runge.
Thank you. I guess this question is to Councillor Vic. I think the motion is wonderful. I'm just wondering if we could somehow put something in that we revisit it sometime in the future, maybe 3-4 years in the future. Currently, it states kind of totally open, and although it might be perfect, I'm not sure if, you know, if things happen to change in the future, this motion might tie us. I was just, if we could maybe, it's not that we would turn it down, but
yeah, maybe I can just clarify with the city manager. We normally would do this, I think there's 1 year left, and we would probably just roll it over as a 3-year lease. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, my preference would be to clarify, the date is June 30th of this year. It actually expires, so it's timely that we're looking at it. But my preference would be to do it either through a 2-year lease or a 3-year lease, working with Canadian Mental Health Association, see what works best for them. In addition, we have some other maintenance type supports we provide to this building. So we do some janitorial, they do some of their own, but the city does provide some of that janitorial or other maintenance work that the building needs, of course. So yeah, my preference would be to put a term on it. And I think while we're here, I would actually like to add a little resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into such lease, just so that we don't have to come back and revisit it at a future council meeting, just for the sake of efficiency.
Okay, so if we could indicate to Councillor Runge's point that they contemplate a 2 or 3 year lease extension as per the terms that we've got here, we can close this motion and then do a second motion to authorize the city manager sign such a lease. Does that address your concern, Councillor Runge? Okay, so if we add that language to it, then on this motion, anyone opposed? Okay, and then Councillor Vic, you comfortable making the motion to give the city manager authority to enter such lease?
Absolutely, I'll move that.
Seconder. Councillor Runge, second. Any further questions or comments on that? Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay. On the report itself, any questions or comments? Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the North Central Local Government Association resolutions, is it absolutely necessary that a resolution fit within the council's strategic plan? And I'll give you one example. Previously, I put together a resolution that was unanimously endorsed, and that was to have the Ministry of Transportation and Highways come up with a more durable material for line painting. Obviously, that did not fit or would not fit with the city's strategic plan. So what I'm asking is the rule hard and fast that we will only deal with resolutions that go to the city's strategic plan?
Well, I'll weigh in first. I would say no, it's not. But obviously, a resolution, as you just described, I think is still important to the community. And what we're asking is just to expedite these motions, bring it to executive, and we'd love to help support you in that. I don't know if the mayor has anything else to add on that, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, we already have, I'm not sure if it's by way of a policy or a resolution by council that there has to be some alignment with our strategic initiatives. This is not just strategic plan, but strategic initiatives, and public safety is always a strategic initiative. But the question of alignment, and if you recall, it was a question about carefully using our political capital as opposed to just willy-nilly using it. You know, we're all get the emails and the letters where you've got councils that are all over the map firing letters around and firing resolutions around. And we decided, I believe, a couple of years ago that we wanted to try and be more deliberate. all this is a process, because as the city manager pointed out, staff get involved in writing these, and we're keeping our staff hopping right now on all of our initiatives. So by using the executive as a filter, we don't have staff directly engaged with a councillor with a resolution that may not be received well by council. So it's not the intent to shut the resolutions down. It's just to make sure that staff time is used well and that the resolution has a chance of success when it comes to council. Okay. Is that good for you, Councillor Paul?
Yes, it is. I will be putting in a resolution regarding, I think the matter of daylight saving time needs a little jog, and we'll see what executive has to say about that.
Sure. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Vic. Good report. Just as far as the interconnector and community engagement, is there anything that we can be updated on now, as I'm constantly getting questions on where we're at? So can we update anything at all before the actual community engagement?
We will. Go ahead, Councillor Vic.
No, City Manager Johnson might have a bit of information, but definitely there's been a change of players, and we're sort of waiting for that dust to settle. But I know the city manager might have something to add on that.
Yeah, go ahead, city manager.
I hesitate to comment too much on this one until such time as we've specifically cleared it for public comment from Modi. And we do have somewhat of an update which we provided to Econ, but again, it's still probably embargoed information.
Yeah, I think our biggest issue, Councillor Elliott, is that we have a new minister, new deputy minister, a new project lead, and some changes in the deputy ministers group, a new finance minister, a new treasury board. So we just want to make sure that we get directly from the current project team what they understand the status to be. The project itself was announced by the province. They did issue a press release on the project. They indicated that the project submission was accepted by the Ministry of Transportation executive, and we do have a sense of the order of magnitude dollars needed to take it to the next stage of planning, which would be a 2-year planning stage to do the complete design work and business case and so on. So we know bits and pieces of it, but now that everything's kind of settling back in, we want to meet with the Modi project team, get some clarity, then to your point, bring that report to council so that we can update council in a public meeting. And then from that, then go back out to the community with the permission of the team we're working with to basically say to people, we would like you to engage, whether we do a postcard campaign or an email campaign or what do we do, just to let all the new players know that this is a very significant project for our community and a game changer for us. So there will be a report coming to council with the latest and greatest as soon as we can get it to you.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Councillor Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the food security, and I'm not sure of process here, but I guess what I'm doing is volunteering myself to take a role somehow with the food security, go to that meeting in April, maybe be a liaison, but I'm not sure what the process is and how to begin that. But I know it's kind of weird, but I am volunteering to take on a position or with the food.
Yeah, and we're aware of that, Councillor Goulet, and we met, as you all know, I'm meeting with the individual councillors looking at, roles and responsibilities and workload. So Councillor Vic and I and the city manager had that conversation today, and we will get back to you. But as Councillor Vic indicated, I think for that April meeting, then, as many council members who are interested, I think it's a good show of support for us to be there. And it's that April meeting that will kind of determine the roles and responsibilities and the role that we'll take as a council going forward. So we have some time to sort some of that out, but your interest in it is definitely noted. And Any other comments? I've got a couple of quick comments myself. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm wondering if I want to highlight under food security, the last bullet. City will work with the food coordinator to support efforts to educate and inform city and area residents about available food resources and supports. The first step to be considered is a mail out to all area residents. We had quite a substantive conversation about what this might look like and about the mail out itself. Councillor Bix had a follow-up conversation with the community food coordinator. So we are going to try and flesh that out. And the thinking would be something that educates our residents about the issue of food security, educates them about the agencies that work in this area, so that if they want to be making donations, they can. And then some of the issues around kind of the kinds of food donations and or cash donations that work best for those agencies, because the vast majority of our residents, of course, would not be as interested in where to get the actual food supports as engaging them in how to support those who provide those food supports. So it's going to be a kind of a nuanced mailer on the issue. Along with the fact that the food support providers do change. They change their schedules and, sometimes change the, seasonally, et cetera. So that one's a bit of a harder one to pin down, but we'll work with Kirsten to have a place that people can go to. With that in mind, I would invite council to give us a resolution inviting the North Cariboo rural directors to participate in this process, potentially with their economic development fund. And the reason for that is our mailer would only go to our municipal residents and the fringe area in particular, but all of the residents in the North Cariboo, I think, should be given access to this information and be asked to support on this initiative. And so by way of a resolution of council to the Northern rural directors, I think it allows them to engage with us in this process. And we think it would be in the order of magnitude of about maybe $2,500 from each of us to make this happen, but we would get it costed out and put it in front of them. So if we could have a resolution to that effect, then we can get that to them. Councillor Runge, so moved, seconded. Councillor Vic, any further questions or comments on that particular piece? Anyone opposed? Okay, carried. And Councillor Vic, I think if we give you that resolution, then maybe you could speak with their chair, Director Schustrom, so that she's just given a heads up and context for receiving the resolution.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll do it. Yep.
And then the other piece that I want to just briefly bring council up to date on is that this executive meeting really triggered a deep conversation about communications and engagement. And the last week's council meeting and the aspirations of council to engage more fully with the public in these strategic conversations that we're starting to have. So around the airport, the landfill, when we get into some of the other major initiatives that we have in front of us. So we had a communications team meeting, and I just want to give council a heads up that as Councillor Vic pointed out, as the executive tracks all of these strategic conversations and strategic initiatives, we also will need to track, how are we engaging the public? Are we doing surveys? What are we doing to be able to move that along? So the city manager and Director Bolton are going to put a little précis together to get in front of the finance committee, because we are currently, maxed out on our communications with our communications clerk. We're also going into a period of transition in that position because of some of the staff changes that have occurred. So if we want to maintain momentum, we may have to go and get a little bit of external assistance, and the residual COVID grant money that we have could be applied to this. It's an appropriate use for that funding. So don't be surprised if you see us coming to you through FSAC with a little bit of resources to be able to meet council's aspirations for more engagement and more communications with the public, because we currently do not have the resources to add any more to that at this point. So any questions or comments on that? Okay, so stay tuned. All right, thank you, Councillor Vic. And then final council report, Councillor Vic on the North Cariboo Seniors Council meeting.
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. I just love talking about my reports from these meetings, because this council continues to do excellent work for the community, and today's report is no different. So this is reporting back from the January 27th meeting. I got four items I'd like to bring you up to speed on. The first of which is the group has secured additional funding of $5,000 from Community Foundation. So this is a new grant, and this will allow them to provide 80 seniors, again, with meals for those seniors that are vulnerable and need this kind of support. So these meals will be prepared for seniors up until, I believe this funding they estimate is good until March. So again, the meal service, the meal support is extremely valuable, well appreciated, and has become a critical component of the North Cariboo Seniors Council's activity. The second is a bit of a carryover from last year. You may recall that the NCSC received grant funding to do lawn care and some lawn maintenance for seniors. There was a little bit of residual funding left over, which had been planned to turn into snow removal services. And that has begun in earnest in July, and they found someone to do this. They only have a little bit of cash left in this reserve to do this, but it'll give them a good idea of how widespread the issue is, how much uptake there would be from seniors that need this kind of service in our community. So far, they have 22 clients signed up. So I don't expect that fund will last long. Next up on the meeting is another excellent program. They've begun with funding from the United Way. They received $5,000 grant from the United Way last year late. The start of this program begins this month. It's called the Taxi Voucher Program, and seniors that can't afford it or need the support, they have 40 clients roughly signed up, and basically they've created, they did this all themselves. They've created ID badges so that seniors that are accessing the taxi service through Cariboo Taxi are identified, and they're basically have about $110 worth of credit on these vouchers, for which they can use to get around our community and do their shopping, get to doctor's appointments, you name it. So this program is fully subscribed, and there are approximately 40 seniors that have already subscribed to the service. So we're very excited to see how that wraps up. But again, engaging in transportation needs of seniors is another one of the core mandates of the NCSC, and they're well underway. And then lastly, they have a new partnership, which is sort of one of the topics I wanted to cover, is the amazing partnerships which the NCSC is forging all the time. The latest partnership is with a group of volunteers, which I know many of you will know. There's 6 of them, and they provide income tax prep support for seniors that need it. And this group of volunteers was struggling because they need some support to come up with laptops, office supplies, so that when they meet with seniors to produce these tax, the income tax reports, they don't have the support they need to do it. And now they are actually, all of them have become members of the NCSC, and now the NCSC is assisting them in the rollout of this program. It's put on by the federal government. It's called the Canada Volunteer Income Tax Program. So locally in Quesnel, the NCSC is now partnered with these individuals to provide this a very important service to seniors. So again, very happy to give council this update, and I'll take any of your questions.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Vic. Any questions or comments for Councillor Vic? Councillor Runge?
Councillor Vic, it just sounds wonderful what's being done there. And I just, when you can talk to the Seniors Council, this looks really, really great. It's really impressive. Thank you. And a great report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Vic. We'll then move on to staff reports and Manager Robinson on our Forestry Initiatives Program annual report. Oh, look,
We're here on the new smart board.
You got these little tiny people
Hey.
in the room there, Lacey and Aaron.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Can everyone hear us okay?
Yeah.
So the purpose of this report is for Council to receive the Forestry Initiatives Program 2020 Annual Report to inform them of our key achievements over the last year. There are no recommendations. This is brought forward for informational purposes only. May I move into the body of the report?
Absolutely. It's your time and your dime. Fly
Thank
out.
you. Thank you, sir. So during this report, Lacey and I will highlight some of the key initiatives we worked on in 2020. I will focus mostly on our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or the CWPP, while Lacey will focus mainly on the manufacturing file, including biomass scoping study and our UBC intern. For the sake of time, we won't be reviewing every section together tonight, but we can answer questions and provide additional information to Council, the media, or the public after the meeting. So I'd like to bring your attention now to page 2 of our report, which is page 26 of the Council's agenda. So the Forestry Initiative Program has enabled over 11,000 hours of employment, and this doesn't include Lacey's and my staff time. This employment has been made possible through provincial funding from the CRI program, or Community Resilience Investment Program, the Forest Enhancement Society of BC, and the Forest Employment Program. So we'll now turn our attention, still on page 2, to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I think it's important to highlight for Council that the city to date has assessed over 74% of the area that's under our responsibility as identified in our plan. Of that area, we have prescribed 351 hectares to date, and we've treated 112. The city currently has funding until March 2022, and that's when Forest Enhancement Society BC sunsets. We're working with the province to secure funding past this date, and we're also advocating that FES continues, or a similar funding body that allows us to apply directly to it is sustained. We continue to collaborate with licensees, that's West Fraser Mills and BC Timber Sales, on units that fall within their operating areas. And we also work with Flinrord and BC Parks to advance as many hectares as possible. And we plan on convening a multi-party meeting in 2021 to check with other parties on the work that falls outside of the city's responsibility, just to make sure we're tracking on all those hectares that are outside of our responsibility. And the community forest, of course, if and when it comes, will change the situation for where those boundaries lie. So that remains to be seen at this time. And now I will turn the floor over to Lacey with manufacturing.
Thanks, Erin. So if you go to page 28 of your agenda, under manufacturing analysis, I'll highlight 3 projects. But first, on a high level, the manufacturing initiative aims to advance the transition towards more value-added production, grow the bioeconomy, and deliver it as a renewables-based solution for meeting climate targets, and bolster the strength of our economy by supporting our existing industry and encouraging new businesses to use underutilized fiber. So first, 2 reports were completed by consultants to identify opportunities for Quesnel in the solid products and bioproducts markets. These reports are being used to explore economic opportunities and to pursue further market research. Second, the biomass utilization scoping study. So by reviewing the local fiber supply and the fiber demands and the LHTAKO and NASCO community objectives, this study aims to select a First Nation-led business opportunity that complements existing fiber users. So we estimate that a draft report will be done early March, and the final copy would be complete in April. So the second phase of this project would be pursuing project financing. Third, we have a PhD student coming from UBC Forestry to work with us as an intern. So they're starting April 1st for 4 to 6 months. They'll work from Vancouver, but they'll be visiting Quesnel several times to conduct interviews with industry. It's to produce a final report that maps out the industry's social network and best approaches to encourage innovation. Another benefit of this would be that it's expected to stimulate additional research in Quesnel from that UBC group. And I just wanted to note that these projects align with advancing the future of forestry think tank recommendations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lacey. And that's all from us. Mayor, I turn it back over to you.
Okay, questions or comments from council? Okay. Just for council's edification, Aaron and I also gave a briefing to the president of UBCM, Brian Fenkel. Councillor Runberg was on in her capacity with UBCM and then one of their senior staff. The reason for that meeting was in part because the new minister of Flynn Roard mentioned Quesnel and what we were doing a few times when the president and vice president were meeting with her, and a sort of a get to know meeting. And I think it was a really good opportunity for us to highlight all of the work you see represented in here. We do continue to lead on so many fronts here. And I think, you know, the conversation I had just before Christmas with West Fraser's senior management, we're regrouping again in early February around that. The work that is being done on our community forest, the work on the manufacturing side, you know, I can't understate how important the work is for our community, but also how innovative all of this work is. So, you know, it's kind of hard to look at a piece of paper and see all of this stuff. We're beginning to take it a little bit for granted. But when other communities look at this, they go, how the heck do you guys do this, right? So kudos to council for continuing to support this, and big kudos to Aaron and Lacey for all the work that you're doing on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no questions, thank you. And do we formally need to adopt this annual report? That's the only question I have. We don't have a formal recommendation, but I'm not sure because it is an annual report to council. Does it require a formal adoption by council? Thoughts on that, City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would suggest that no, it does not require any formal process on council's part.
Okay, and because of the way we're doing our agenda now, it's automatically received by council. Part of
Absolutely.
Our agenda. Okay, thank you, Lacey and Aaron. Keep up the good
Bye.
work. Okay, next up, Coordinator Blair. If she's not on, then it would be Manager Reid. Oh, there we go, Lindsay. Go ahead with the BC Winter Games bid.
The purpose of this report is to gain council's approval to submit a bid package to the BC Games Society for the City of Quesnel in partnership with LHTAKO DENE Nation and support from the Cariboo Regional District to host the 2024 BC Winter Games. The BC Winter Games bid package is a high-level overview of available sporting infrastructure and hosting capabilities of the City and School District 28. The bid application requires a partnership with the local school district. School District 28 will accommodate all students and will host many of the sporting events. A resolution has been obtained from the School District 28 board in support of the games. A resolution for partnership has been attained from the LHTAKO DENE Nation, and a resolution of financial support has been obtained from the Cariboo Regional District. A resolution of support from the QP custodial unions for the school board is pending. We should know in a few days. And local letters of support from sporting clubs and associations, local business owners, and private and non-profit sport venue owners have been obtained. I'll move to the recommendations if there's no questions.
Go ahead with the recommendation, Lindsay.
That Quesnel City Council submit a bid to host the 2024 BC Winter Games in partnership with LHTAKO DENE Nation and support from the Cariboo Regional District, and that if the bid is successful, an in-kind contribution of up to $10,000 to be included in the operating budget in the applicable year to support hosting the 2024 BC Winter Games in Quesnel.
Councillor Elliott, so moved. seconded, Councillor Vic. Questions or comments for Lindsay? Councillor Vic.
Thanks, Lindsay, for that report. I absolutely support the initiative, support the recommendation. I think it's a great opportunity, obviously, for our local athletes to show what they're bringing to the table, but obviously from an economic development perspective, I think it's a great way to showcase our community. So thank you very much for preparing this, and that's great.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, on the motion then, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion has carried unanimously. Thanks, Lindsay, as always, for the work you do on these grant applications. Okay, so you're up again on the next one.
The purpose of this report is to gain council's approval to submit an application to Northern Development Initiative Trust's Capital Investment Analysis Funding Program. This project is for an airport hangar investment analysis, which will provide a business case and estimate the expected cash flow of a new hangar, assess the riskiness of those flows, determine the need for a new airport hangar, estimate the appropriate opportunity cost of capital, and determine the project's profitability and break-even characteristics. I'll move on to the recommendations if there's no
Yeah,
questions.
you bet.
That Quesnel City Council supports the application to the Northern Development Initiative Trust Capital Investment Analysis Stream for a $10,000 grant from the Cariboo Chilcotin Lillooet Regional Development Fund for the Airport Hangar Investment Analysis Project, and that Council approves the allocation of $10,000 from the 2021 operating budget for this project.
I have a mover and seconder. Councillor Rudenberg, so moved. Seconder. Councillor Vic. This is an outcome of last week's conversation. Any questions or comments on this? And I believe, just for clarity, Director Bolden, we did talk about the operating budget is going to come forward, but we talked about this possibly coming from the COVID dollars as an eligible expense out of that.
Yeah, that would be great. And if council actually wants to move that motion right now, then it's on the books as coming from the COVID Safe Restart Grant.
Yeah, so I think if we just did the addition, council approves the allocation of $10,000 from the 2021 operating budget for this project, the money coming from the COVID Safe Restart money from the province. So is that okay for the mover and seconder if we just make that clarification statement on it? Okay, super. Any other questions or comments on this then? Councillor Paul? No, you're not muted. You're still muted.
Sorry, I double muted. Will there be opportunity down the road to discuss whether there's an opportunity to have a tensioned fabric hanger as opposed to a bricks and mortar?
So again, Councillor Paul, you're way ahead of the game in terms of what the structure would be. This is the business case analysis to see if it's even worth contemplating looking at structure. And then if the business case analysis comes back and said yes, then all the questions about what kind of structure, et cetera, can be explored then. This just to see if it's worth even pursuing.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, on that, on the motion as slightly adjusted, anyone opposed? Okay, seeing none, that motion is passed. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Okay, the Questwood transition table update from Manager Reid.
Okay. The purpose of this report is to provide council with an update of the Questwood transition table process. So following the closure of the Questwood sawmill back in 2019, the province initiated a transition table framework in the community, which is similar to what was done after the Camp foreclosure. After an initial large meeting involving multiple community groups, local provincial staff, business support organizations, and the city, 3 tables were established: a community transition, a worker transition, and an economic development transition table. Meetings took place monthly, then bi-monthly, and now quarterly. These meetings were an opportunity to share information amongst community groups and with the regional manager that many of you know as Emily Colombo, and now her mat leave replacement, Darlene Clark. I won't read the full title there. And Emily and then Darlene was able to connect with community groups and connect them with potential funding opportunities as well. So through the transition tables, a number of initiatives were moved forward. There were many more than are listed here, but some of the highlights included a survey of union workers at TOLCO prior to the actual closure, just determining where they were planning on going, training needs, and that sort of thing. Receipt of 3 community workforce response grants for skilled labor training at CNC, and that funneled through the city. A community job fair coordinated by Work BC, update and distribution of a community mental health resource sheet, collaboration between the city and Literacy Quesnel to apply to the UBCM Poverty Reduction Grant for the Community Learning Center, which is currently operating. Development of a long-form business retention and expansion survey in partnership with Community Futures and the Chamber of Commerce. This was completed just prior to COVID, but we're using that survey now as our base for our 3rd round of calls to business. And a contractor information session, which was held in late 2019, and development of a provincial online portal for forestry workers. The 3 tables have now recombined together to continue to meet quarterly for the purpose of information sharing and to identify opportunities for funding and or collaboration between the groups. The Regional Economic Operations Manager will continue to support the development and agenda of these agendas and minutes of these meetings, sorry. The Community Development Coordinator will participate on behalf of the City of Quesnel. And this is just for information.
Yeah, and I had asked because Amy and I were on the call with Darlene just to catch up as she took over from Emily for maternity leave. And as council members who were there know, we never really did get a closure or a kind of an update précis on what happened with the Canfor mill closure. It was always just kind of left hanging. So the 3 of us discussed on that call about trying to just put something in front of council. For the new council members, we actually convene these tables. It's the municipal government that acts as the lead agency to convene the tables, get things started off, and then our staff have been involved in various forms in the different tables where appropriate. So I just asked for this to come forward as a bit of a closure. It's been, I guess, 18 months now, somewhere in that neighborhood, to just give council a sense of what kinds of activities come from these transition tables. Hopefully we do not have to form another one anytime soon, but I thought it was good edification for council to get a sense of what transpired. Any questions or comments for Amy? I'm not seeing any, Amy. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I think it is important for us to see the work that was done, so I appreciate it. And you were able to answer a question and, you know, get us by way of email. Everybody got the link that Amy promised to give to us for that website that we can go look at. So thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hey, and then you're on tap for the next one.
Yes, so the purpose of this report is to receive council approval to move forward with a feasibility study for the standing wave feature in the waterfront plan and to receive direction regarding improved access to Quesnel Canyon. So 2 projects supporting destination development exist in the Quesnel River. The first is the standing wave, which is in our waterfront plan. Examples of built standing waves or wave parks exist elsewhere, but are not common in British Columbia. So this could be a unique feature in Quesnel. The standing wave may or may not be possible at the location where it was proposed, either ecologically or hydrologically, based on what is written in the waterfront plan. And we know for sure, no matter where it goes, it will require a number of permits and approvals. So Urban Systems has drafted a work plan for consulting services, which would include researching and drafting an RFP for a feasibility study, collaborating with the successful proponent, and providing environmental services to identify the full list of relevant local, provincial, and federal legislation, as well as regulatory applications that will need to be required. A local contractor will be used to assist with outreach and consultation with local stakeholders. The approximate cost of moving this project forward to a feasibility study and implementation plan is $40,000, and that includes Urban Systems as well as a local contractor and the contractor who would actually do the feasibility study. So all three are in that cost. For Quesnel Canyon, this is a little bit evolving since I wrote the report, but there is a Whitewater section that has been accessed in the past by local kayakers and has potential for future development. It's just east of the city. The current access road is known as the Blue Road, and it's in quite poor condition, and the access point itself is in poor condition. There was also previously a takeout point, and that has been washed out. So now kayakers go in at the poor access point for a short fun paddle in Whitewater, and then a long float and shuttle all the way back around to their starting point, whereas previously they could go just through the Whitewater and do a short shuttle back to the starting point and really play in the water for a half day or full day. So there is an opportunity to improve access, or a potential opportunity to improve access working with rec sites and trails and local users. And in order to move forward, further work is needed to consult with users, rec sites and trails, possible private landowners, and develop a plan for an improved access point and potential new takeout point. As Quesnel Canyon is outside of city limits, staff require direction as to whether to proceed or to work with the CRD to move this forward. And the approximate cost of going right to a concept design and implementation plan is $30,000. I've listed options at the end of the report, and perhaps a fourth option is a smaller cost to just work with a local contractor to do a little bit more digging. My initial conversation with rec sites and trails, we had about a half-hour conversation and a bit of an email follow-up, and it sort of opened up more questions than given answers at this point. So so getting a few more answers before we go further might be another option to consider. So the first recommendation, just for the standing wave, is that Quesnel City Council approves the use of $40,000 from the council initiatives budget to complete the standing wave feasibility study and implementation plan.
Councillor Elliott, you moving that? Okay, Councillor Runberg second. And Councillor Elliott, I saw your hand up there. Did you want to make a comment? No, okay. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, I have Councillor Runge, Vic, and Paul.
Thank you. I've been giving this a little bit of thought, and originally when this came out, urban systems kind of, we questioned the viability of this option of the standing wave, and I would rather see a quick check with relevant ministries prior to spending any kind of consulting money to see if it's actually even feasible. And for me, there's another red flag that kind of sits in the back of my head, and that's currently the location, or the locations that we might look at might be affected by the interconnector. And then the other thing that, well, currently where they were originally pointing out, it was just south of the interconnector, right? And then the other question I have is city liability for something that we create like that by the water. And it comes from, I did a little bit of research, a little quick research with regards to waves, and standing waves are extremely sensitive. And, so the question that I have, are these going to be real-time waves or adjustable waves? And there's so many hoops for us to follow. The return on investment, I think, is for the cost is too low to actually contemplate right now. In the future, I think it might be a perfect idea, but and then when I'm looking at other locations, Alberta, Quebec, US, Germany, a lot of those rivers where they're running standing waves very successfully are on rivers that have the ability to be shut off at night. So a dam or something like that, they shut down to a low level so they can make adjustments to the waves. So currently I would be against this motion based on not so much that I'd rather just wait a little bit longer to see a little bit more on what's going on. I just don't think it's the right time to just put it forward this year.
Councillor Vic.
I'm going to echo some of the concerns by Councillor Runge, although I think in principle, not against the project. I think it would be a really interesting and innovative attraction for the community. But I agree with Councillor Runge in that, is there not a way to see if this is a non-starter before we put a penny of consulting money into its feasibility in the community? It just seems it's on the knife's edge if it's even a possibility. And there's got to be a way to not spend $40,000 to see if that's the case.
Councillor Paul?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to echo the comments of the previous two speakers. And I'll give you a case in point that went way back when I was on staff and we were developing the Riverfront Trail. We put the idea out there that to develop a little bit of a beach area on the Riverfront Trail, sort of like where the BC or the CN rail yard is. There was a nice sandy little back eddy there. And we were told in no uncertain terms by fisheries that it was a non-starter. So where I'm going with this is that couldn't we find out from Ministry of Environment or from fisheries if this would be possible before we go and spend $40,000 on a consultant?
So a couple of things come to mind, folks, and I get your pain. But number one, the standing wave possibility is part of our waterfront development strategy that was adopted unanimously by council. Second, you're talking chicken and egg here, because if we go to the regulatory bodies, they're going to say, what are you suggesting? And sort of what would it look like? What are some of the issues? And, you know, for them to be able to comment beyond not in our lifetime, we need to actually be able to do some of the work so that they understand what we are potentially asking. You know, the Shasta, the consultant on this, felt in talking to some of the folks when she did the research that there's the opportunity for some habitat restoration, that you could do it in a way that is better for fish in that area. So, I mean, it's council's wish. This is going to be a long burn regardless. So to Councillor Runge's, let's put it off to another time. All you're doing is extending the time frame before you can actually begin to get to a conversation that has the technical rigor to be able to have the approving authorities to be able to say this makes sense to us or not. So each year you're delaying it, you're just making the conversation longer. So it's the will of council. It's in our waterfront strategy. That's why it's being brought forward. And in particular, because it's going to take us quite a while to figure this out and go back and forth. And I think to Manager Reid, you know, we could attempt to convene just a regulatory authorities meeting to have at least a preliminary discussion with them. What are your thoughts about meeting with those folks without any idea of what we're talking about?
Well, I think we would get that question of well, tell us more about what it is you want to do. I think the other thing too is having a contractor support to even convene that meeting, just to add to the capacity to figure out who are all the people that we need to have at that table, and to coordinate that to get them there would really help.
Okay, other thoughts or comments from council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in this case, if we wanted to try to achieve it, we could do some of that. I don't know whether it's feasibility or even pre-feasibility work, but I agree with Amy that we would have, council would have to assign some budget room to look at that. And maybe that's not the full 40,000 for the first look, but it's going to take some money to do it. There has to be enough conceptual work that people can understand what we're talking about if we go to them with, you know, so I agree with you. It's a chicken and egg thing, but if we can probably get into that initial investment and in pre-feasibility work for not that full 40, but for, and I don't even know what that amount would be.
So noting that, then I've got Councillor Elliott and Councillor Runge, but we could also stand this down and come back with something along the lines of what the city manager is suggesting, of just get enough information to be able to have an informed conversation with the decision makers in this regard. I have Councillor Elliott and then Councillor Runge.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't disagree with trying to get as much information going into this as we can, but I feel that this is a wonderful initiative for the whole area. I mean, just looking at what's happened in the last year or two with our trails initiatives, if that campground comes together, and I know it will, having that standing wave close by, I think is just going to be another economic driver for the city. And I think it's extremely important. If we can have some initial conversations to see where DFO and others are going to land. I mean, it's happened in other locations in the province. So it's not a non-starter, but dealing with DFO and any of these kind of things is going to be tricky for sure. So I think we should get the ball rolling. If there's any way that we can save some money in doing it initially, then let's do that. But there's a lot of interest already. There's people talking about this. So I'd like to see it moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Runge. You're on mute, Councillor Runge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the offer of standing it down until we know a little bit more. I'd love to see if there's any other NDIT funding or something to support it, so it's not coming out of council initiatives right now. We do have a fairly full, agenda. I don't think it's going to hurt to keep pushing it off by, a couple months and finding out a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay. So we do have a recommendation from staff. I haven't asked for that to be formalized in a motion. Those council members who haven't spoken, are you comfortable with Manager Reid going and coming back to us with, as the city manager's indicated, something along the lines of pre-feasibility, getting us just enough information we need to be able to have an informed discussion with the regulatory authorities? Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. I would like us to go down that path right now because I see where everybody is in this discussion, and I think more information that we have, the better our discussion will be on the table. We're not kind of floating a bunch of what ifs in our heads. We'll have a better understanding. So I think we need to go down that path that the city manager has suggested.
Okay. So city manager, you're comfortable, and Manager Reid to just go and take a look at revisiting this. And then with respect to the Quesnel Canyon, my suggestion would be that probably one of the best people we've got already available to us to take a look at access and so on, and it's funded under North Cariboo Rec, would be Mr. Van Leusden. And Manager Reid, I think with Ian's connections, because it's the same characters as Desi and others, to take a look at this. Would that make sense to you, that we would just take it to potentially to joint planning or something to advance it with our partners in the CRD?
Yeah, I think the actual area is outside of the sub-regional rec boundary. But I think Ian is the right person to move it forward because it's very similar to the work he's doing on trails.
Yeah, and the CRD Northern Director Exec Dev function is not restricted to the rec boundary. Yeah. So if they want to partner with us on at least doing the assessment, I do want to let council know that in both these cases, access and egress to the canyon and a standing wave, the Blackwater paddlers, to Councillor Paul's point, have had aspirations for these two very things for a very long time. And when I talk to them, and they are, water-based individuals, and they say that this is stuff that they've been ruminating about for a long time, and they know the water well. The other thing to keep in mind is, we were behind Williams Lake in the development of our mountain bike trail network. I think we're catching up and potentially have the possibility to go forward. The Whitewater community in Williams Lake is growing rapidly right now, as it is around the province. I took some courses down in Vernon with my son and daughter with a group that operates out of Vernon on all of their rivers down through there, so that as we looked at the trails initiative, we were a bit laggards on being able to develop our trails, market our trails, and position them the way they're being positioned now. I'm just giving you a heads up. Water is on that same train. So getting access to the water, playing in the water, all of those things is on that same train. And if we can position ourselves around this with these two assets, we position ourselves in a very, very unique way. Hence that's why we put it into our waterfront development strategy. So let's regroup on these. On the one, we'll bring something back to council on a pre-feasibility study and take a look at the finances involved to get us there. And then on the Quesnel Canyon one, Councillor Rudenberg as co-chair, if you can look for an opportunity for us to bring this forward to discuss with the northern directors of the Cariboo Regional District, that would be great.
Excuse me, Mayor, you did have a mover and a seconder for the standing wave resolution.
Okay, my apologies. Can I have a vote on that then to stand it down just now? So you'd have to vote in the nay. You'd have to reject the recommendation. So all those in favor of the recommendation as is, all those opposed. Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry, Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. We do have the agenda ready for next Tuesday already. Did this need to be on this agenda, or it can be on the next month? Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense, Amy? You don't, there's not a in our face time sensitivity.
I don't think there's a huge rush. It's just, it's going to take a long time to move these forward. So yeah.
Okay, Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment regarding the Quesnel Canyon access. A week ago, the Auditor General filed a report indicating what poor condition our forestry service roads are in general for access by residents and enthusiasts who go in the outdoors. So the timing might be right to, with that information in mind, this is an access road. There may be an opportunity to leverage that request with some support from, I'm not sure which ministry, but the Auditor General says they're not safe. So there's our opportunity to make an argument.
Yeah. Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just for people's understanding, on the Sunshine Coast, there's an area of the ocean called the Skookumchuck Narrows. And it has waves that, depending on the tide, are very extreme. And people come from around the world to go to the community of Egmont of 300 or whatever it is. And it's a big economic driver for the whole area. So if you want to kind of take a look at that, that's the Skookumchuck Narrows. It's just one opportunity, and it's been growing exponentially year by year. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're done with this. Any further comments or questions? Okay, thanks, Amy. I appreciate that. Okay, the final staff report on the Northern Development Initiative Trust grant application. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because we can't get enough of talking about the gold pan. So the gold pan, council had quite an extensive discussion as part of our capital plan process, which was formally approved to do the gold pan project. At that point in time, staff said that we would apply to NDIT for grant funding for $30,000 to help offset the costs of the works we plan to do with the gold pan sign. This report actually provides that recommendation that's needed for that grant funding. And that recommendation is that Quesnel City Council supports the Community Places grant application to Northern Development Initiative Trust for the Gold Pan Placemaking Project. And that, as you can see from that chart, the ask is for $30,000, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and this, sorry, go ahead. This is as per council's adoption of the operating or the capital budget. Go ahead, City Manager.
Exactly. Thank you, and sorry for interrupting. I would like to suggest that we add another resolution to support that as well. And that is that council supports a $30,000 contribution from Council Initiatives Fund if the NDIT application is not successful. And I think what the intent is from the perspective of administrative efficiency, so we can stop bringing report after report on this issue. We're just done once. First goal is to get the NDIT grant. Once we hear if it's not successful, then we will put council initiatives funding in to complete the project, which council approved last meeting.
So let's do them as two separate resolutions, please. The council supports the grant application as per written. I see Councillor Elliott with your hand up, seconded. Councillor Rudenberg, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? Okay, I oppose Councillor Paul. Okay,
I'd like that recorded, please.
okay. And then the second resolution, that in the absence or not obtaining the grant from NDI, that $30,000 from council initiatives be put to this project so that the project can be completed. Councillor Elliott, so moved. Seconded. Councillor Goulet. Questions or comments? All in favor? Sorry, I guess I'm just calling for oppose. My mistake, sorry. Those in opposition? Okay, Councillor Paul.
And recorded, please.
Okay. Thank you. That's that. Who just dropped off my sheet? Oh, there, Councillor Elliott. Okay. And City of Quesnel. Guys are flipping all around on me here. Okay, council information package issue number 3. We've received any comments on that. Nobody asked for anything to be pulled forward. Okay, and then you'll note, I was able to update council last week on this. You'll note the formal notification from Northern Health on the vaccination process in town. No changes to upcoming meeting schedules. Just a note that upcoming budget meeting is a special meeting. So council, please do pay attention to the budget document that you will get. That will be your opportunity to dig in on the operating budget before we bring it to council for a vote at a regular meeting. And then that will also give the public an opportunity between that discussion and the vote to engage with council members if they have questions or concerns. No changes to committee appointments, announcement, future events. I don't see anybody's hands up. Any gallery questions from the 2 press? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Elliott, so moved. Councillor Runge, second. Anyone opposed to that one? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it very much in this weird world we live in. Take care, everybody.